So, am I happy that my book causes trigger moments for some people? No, not at all. I'm saying to you that if you get to the end of the book, there's some healing that will take place. There's some healing in my life that took place once I made decisions that things had to change. And if you can just get to the other side of that trigger, there'll be some healing in your life once you make these decisions that things have to change. This is Shayla Renee, and welcome back to another episode of Take Back Your Life Conversations with Shay, where we help women who are ready to turn the corner from past trauma and drama and overcome toxic thoughts, feelings, people, and situations through a closer relationship with Christ. In 40 minutes or less, every single week, I will provide you with both spiritual and practical tips that will help you overcome any form of toxicity that may be destroying your life. If you will just make the commitment, stay plugged in, and take action. So, if you're ready, let's get to work. In today's episode, we will discuss triggers, what they are, what they show us about ourselves, and how we overcome them. But before we jump into that, I want to thank you for tuning in today. For all of you who are my return visitors, I thank you for your support. And if you're new here, please be sure to hit that subscribe button so you will be notified when a new video drops. And leave a comment below if you found something that was helpful for you in this video. Now let's get to it. So recently, during one of my group coaching sessions, a participant mentioned to me something that I had not heard before, so I was a tad bit alarmed when she first mentioned it. But she said that regarding my book, in regards to my book, she read half of my book and got to a part that triggered her. I came to be grateful that she was able to share that with me because it brought some things into perspective for me. And I'm thinking now that maybe I should have put a trigger warning on my book. So what I'll do is put a trigger warning on this video. My book talks about some deep stuff regarding my personal life that I went through because I lacked an identity. And some of that deep stuff that I went through in a relationship consists of verbal, financial, emotional, and physical abuse from an ex-boyfriend. And I hate to say that because I've been married now 10 years, and who's an ex? Like, that's corny. But the book talks about a relationship that was filled with toxicity, both from both sides, from me and from the person that I was with. And they say hindsight is everything. I probably should, in the preference, put a big trigger warning there. If you have been, or if you are currently in some sort of abusive or toxic relationship, some things in this book might bring some stuff up that will cause you to pause and look at your life a little bit. And it may be a little scary for you. So for this person who read my book, who read half of the book and stopped reading it, it's because she recognized some things about either herself or her relationship that she's probably not ready to deal with. And that's what triggers do. Triggers actually bring up some stuff that we are not yet healed from. And then from those moments when those things are brought to our attention, we have some decisions that we need to make. So, am I happy that my book causes trigger moments for some people? No, not at all. I'm saying to you that if you get to the end of the book, there's some healing that will take place. There's some healing in my life that took place once I made decisions that things had to change. And if you can just get to the other side of that trigger, there'll be some healing in your life once you make these decisions that things have to change. Now, I'm not here to downplay anything that you may have gone through that now causes emotional triggers in your life. I mean, we some of us have been through hell and back, and we don't want to deal with some of the stuff that is is packed down deep into our hearts. And I get that. It's scary, it's hard, but I want to encourage you to move past the trigger moments so you may move into healing. I mean, that's my goal as a Christian life coach. But you don't do this on your own. Now, some people may be in a position where you're not able to sit down and read my book without having a mentor or without having someone to hold you accountable or even having a therapist to walk you through the emotions that come when you are triggered by a scenario that you read in my book that's similar to something that you may have just gone through. Remember, we're not here on earth to walk through this alone. We need help. I had help. I didn't go through this. I didn't get out of the stuff that I got out of on my own. You have people that will help you walk through that. You have people like me. You have Christian life coaches out there that will help you set some goals and help you change perspectives in life. And then there's therapists, which is, even they'll help you go even deeper and help you develop some life skills that keep you from allowing your past and allowing things that have happened to you to cause you to be frozen in life. So don't do this by yourself. But I implore you that you do need to do this. So just so that we're all clear on what we're discussing today, according to biblicalcounselingcoalition.org, a trigger is a situation, location, words, and people that remind us of past pain or current heartache. And then it goes on to say that these triggers threaten to engulf us in an avalanche of despair, anger, or anxiety. So, in a nutshell, a trigger doesn't cause action, but what it does is it highlights the emotions you feel to a past memory or event. And I'm telling you, you can choose what you do once you're triggered. You could either, one, run to God for healing, or you can run back to some negative coping mechanisms and stop living. So here's an example of what a trigger looks like. And I never really thought about it as being a trigger until recently. And it was funny because I was telling my husband / producer this story yesterday about how certain foods triggered me after I was healed from my physical illness. If you listened to or watched any of my previous episodes, I talked a little bit about me being deathly ill when I was 18, turning 19. So what that looked like, just to give you a drive-by of what my 18-year-old summer looked like, I wouldn't say I was bedridden, but 90% of my time, I spent 90% of the time in the bed. I couldn't keep food down, and I lost a ton of weight. I mentioned like being 82 pounds when I finally went to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia at the age of 19. I was losing a ton of blood. I was severely anemic. And so it wasn't a fun summer for me at all. Like I kind of wished death upon myself. So I wasn't able to hold food down. Like everything I ate pretty much came right back up. But there will be days where I felt a little better than other days, and I would want something to eat besides, chicken noodle soup or broth. And I was excited about that because I felt like, oh, I might be getting better because I have an appetite. So I would ask, my family members to get me things. And if you're from Pennsylvania, or better yet, southeastern Pennsylvania, you might be aware of the giant supermarket chain. And they have fried chicken there. And I loved their fried chicken. Absolutely loved it. I don't know how they got it to taste the way they did. So I would crave these food items like giant fried chicken and Midway hot dogs. And my mom would oblige and go and grab me this food because I'm sure she's excited too that I have an appetite. But what would happen is I would eat the food, I would feel good, and I felt fine for a good 5 minutes. And I'm not exaggerating. I will eat the food and feel like, okay, things are on the up and up for about 5 minutes, and then the food would come right back up. And so what that did was it caused me to be adverse to that giant fried chicken and those Midway hot dogs once I got healed. Once I went through the surgery, hospital stay surgeries, and I was better. I couldn't think about giant fried chicken or Midway hot dogs without triggering a sense of sickness. I would literally feel like I had to, you get it. And that was a little heartbreaking for me because, like I'm saying, I loved those two food items. And those foods triggered me for a few years after my illness. When I was feeling better, I could not think about, look at, smell those two food items without feeling sick. And then one day I said, you know what? I'm going to eat me a piece of giant fried chicken because I'm not going to let this feeling that these thoughts that I'm thinking that I'm going to be sick if I eat this food, I'm not going to let that control what I do. So one day I ate a piece of giant fried chicken. And guess what happened? Can you guess what happened? I didn't get sick. And then later on down the line, guess what I did? I grabbed me 2 Midway hot dogs with everything and ate them. Now, I don't eat them now. One, because I don't even live in the area anymore. But two, I just don't eat them. They're not very healthy. But grabbed two, ate them, felt fine. Overcame those triggers. So just like the physical illness or the physical reaction that I felt to those triggers, I'm telling you that the emotional reactions that you might feel to a trigger, you can overcome. I want you to overcome. I don't want that to hold you hostage. So, like I said before, triggers don't cause action, they highlight an emotion. And you have a decision to make once you are triggered by an event to either run to God or run to self. So, what does running to God look like? It means running to Him with open arms, crying out to him, letting him know that something that you saw or something that you read or something that you heard caused an emotional reaction because it reminded you of an event or circumstance or a person that caused you harm in the past. You run to him and you ask him to wrap his arms around you and comfort you during these times. Prayer. And prayer does not have to be some formula. It literally can be, God, I need you right now. Send me help. Help me search your scriptures to help me get over, help me overcome, not get over, this feeling that I feel from that thing that triggered me. You talk to a counselor or a mentor or a friend that means you well to help you get through these feelings that you're feeling, because you got to admit to yourself that these triggers cause some form of emotional reaction. We're not able to continue to run and hide from what we feel. We got to process that stuff. We got to learn how to process, or we're going to be stuck. And I don't want you stuck. And that's still you running to God, because you're running to someone that has wisdom that God has placed in your life to help you. And I mentioned earlier searching scriptures. The Bible is full of moments, I'm sure, or people that are triggered by some past event. And how did they overcome that? How did that get them unstuck? So there's a scripture that I came across when researching this topic, and I wanted to recite it here for you. So it's Psalm 40, verses 1 through 3. And I will be reading this because I don't have it memorized.
I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined to me and heard my cry.
The Lord hears you when you cry out. Just know that.
He also brought me up out of a horrible pit.
That pit that you feel in your stomach when you're triggered by an event, the Lord will bring you out of that.
Out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, and established my steps. He has put a new song in my mouth, praise to our God. Many will see it and fear and will trust the Lord.
I like this passage, and I'm very grateful that I came upon it when researching triggers, because it allows you to see that there is another side. There is a brighter day if you move past these triggers. The trigger is not meant for you to be paralyzed in life. A trigger is meant to show you where you are in life, where you need help, where you need the Lord to penetrate your heart, and how to move past that. And then once we've moved past these triggers, how do we help other people? I mean, apparently my book is full of triggers, and this is me saying how to help other people who have experienced some of the stuff that I have experienced. It's not meant for you to pause and to stop. It's meant for you to evaluate. I mean, we have to evaluate our lives anyway. We should do self-evaluations regularly in life. And a trigger is just a moment that helps us, or it brings to the realizations that we aren't fully healed from some things. I can talk about almost everything that I went through in the relationship with the person that I call Mr. in the book that I wrote. There's just some things that people don't need to know. But I can talk about it and be okay with talking about it over and over again. I do on a daily basis talk about this relationship because it helps other women who are facing the same stuff that I did. And no emotions because I've been healed from it. No emotions erupt when I talk about it until I start talking about my mom. And there's some stuff that I know that I still need healing from involving how I treated my mom when I was with this person. And some stuff comes up and triggers those moments. There's some movies that I will not watch again because they remind me too much of watching my mom fall fall sick to an illness and lose her life to it, and reminds me that I pretty much wasted her last years, or I didn't spend her last years on this earth wisely. So I know when these moments come up in life, in my life, I got to run to God for help. He has to help. He has to do some stuff in my heart to help heal me from my feelings of guilt and despair when talking or when thinking about my mom, or more importantly, how I treated my mom. So I'm just like you. I'm not I would never downplay some stuff that we were that you've been through, and never tell you that you need to just get over it and move on with your life. But I am here to say that it is possible for you to see a brighter day. It is possible for you to make a decision once these triggers hit of what you're going to do afterwards. Just like we have to take responsibility of how we respond to others. I got to take responsibility of how I respond to my husband if he's driving me crazy one day. I have to take responsibility for my reactions to his actions. And that's just an example. I'm not going to go and talk about my marriage, or, I talk about my husband a lot, mostly because he's sitting right here when I have to do these videos. But he really is an awesome husband and father. So I say these things jokingly, but in all seriousness, I have to take responsibility for my reactions to him, because it's really not about him. It's about me and my relationship with the man above, Jesus Christ, my Savior. So just as that is true, it is also true that I have to take responsibility of how I respond to a triggering moment. I often say that, and it seems a little harsh, and I probably need to figure out a way to reword this, but I often say that the world does not stop at our trauma. We have to continue to live. Life still goes on, as harsh as that sounds. So we may need a moment to reconfigure and readjust, but we still have to continue to move forward. And triggers are great at telling us where we need help. Just like in previous episodes, I talked about unforgiveness lets us know where we are, stuff in our heart that we need to work on. A trigger works almost the same way. So I mentioned what it looks like to run to God when we are triggered by a moment. And here's what you don't want to do when a trigger hits. And I'm going to run through this really quickly because I promise to get you these videos in 40 minutes or less. You don't want to run and isolate from people that could be helping you. You don't want to isolate, one, from God, but then you don't want to isolate from people that are holding you accountable and lifting you up. You don't want to run to those negative coping mechanisms like drug and alcohol. Now, I say that because that's part of my life. That's my story. Yours might be running to the mall to shop. Yours might look like running to Netflix to not think. But you don't want to run to these negative coping mechanisms. And most importantly, you don't want to run back to old or bad environments because that's not going to help you move past and overcome these triggers. It's just going to silence the pain temporarily. It might not even silence the pain. You're stuffing it. You're not recognizing it. You're not processing it. So you don't want to run back to that. And anything else that might take you back instead of spring you forward. You don't want to do that. So when a trigger hits, here's what you want to do. One, you want to recognize the trigger. Give yourself permission to understand that you've been triggered and let yourself feel whatever the emotions that are tied to these triggers. It could be something physical, like mine. I physically got ill when I thought about fried chicken and hot dogs. But you want to recognize it. You want to recognize it and don't ignore it. Two, you want to run to God with it because He's truly the only one that can heal you from the inside out. And we talked about what running to God looks like earlier in the video. The third thing you want to do is get yourself search the scripture, find yourself some life verses that will help you overcome these triggering moments. For an example, if a trigger produces fear, a perfect scripture is Isaiah 41:10. I'm giving you some work here, so go ahead and write it down. But what's important when you search these scriptures and get yourself some life verses is that they match the feelings that you are feeling at the moment that will help you overcome what you're attempting to overcome. Make sure they tie in to what's going on in your life. Number 4, work through it. You can pause, just don't be paralyzed by it. Work through it means therapy. I drop the therapy bomb in almost every episode because I think everyone could benefit from some form of therapy. Counseling, find yourself a mentor, someone who's been through the stuff that you've been through. They made it to the other side and they can give you a how to, we did it. How to, we did it. How to, I did it. How to, you can do it too. And finally, number 5, don't let that trigger beat you. Don't let it beat. Don't let it win. Because the enemy wants that trigger to win. I want you to read half of my book to where you're triggered and stop and not get to the end where I'm healed. Because the enemy doesn't want you healed. You'll lose yourself in despair if you're not healed. He knows that you'll continue those destructive patterns if you're not healed. So don't let it win. And in conclusion, just remember that triggers are not an excuse to stop. They're sent as a reminder that we have work to do. So that's going to do it for this episode. If there's anything that you care to comment below, please feel free to. Remember to like, comment again, and share. If you have not already done so, please be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified when we release new content. So until next time, this is Shayla Renee with another episode or concluding another episode of Take Back Your Life Conversations with Shay. Have a great one.